was the Yankees' first team captain since Lou Gehrig, a fitting honor for a player that many considered the heart and soul of those championship teams of the 70s. As the catcher for those teams, he deserved a large portion of the accolades reaped by the Yankee pitching staff. He won 3 Gold Gloves and tied a Yankee record for fielding average at the catcher's position. He hit .292 over 11 seasons, but saved his best for when his team needed his hitting the most. A .339 average in 3 championship series, highlighted by a game-winning shot in Game 3 of the '78 playoffs against the Royals. And his .373 World Series average was enough to make an opposing manager like Sparky Anderson of the Cincinnati Reds use his visits to the mound as an opportunity to salute Thurman Munson.
He is really a good hitter. Who is a good hitter? Oh, he just stays right with the ball. He doesn't do anything. He just stays right there and keeps everything in and goes with the ball.
Some say that by 1979, his skills had begun to erode, but nobody questioned his heart, which made him the Yankee captain in every sense of the word. For all of the above reasons, it was truly a shock when President and former mates received the news 10 years ago today.
Well, I was in my home in Norwood, New Jersey, when I got the telephone call from Mr. Steinbrenner. And I couldn't believe it, and I ran right across the street. After I told my wife, I ran across the street and told Nettles about it. And Nettles says, you know, he starts laughing. He says, what's the joke or something? He thought I was joking around. And that time, his phone rang, and he talked to Mr. Steinbrenner also, and we said that we couldn't believe it.
Well, I was with my son. It was a day off. I was with my son fishing over in New Jersey, and a boat came out and got me off the lake, and it was probably one of the worst days I ever had in my life when I heard about him. You had to know him. He was just like a great individual.
I found out from a cab driver, and I mean, it was, my heart almost stopped. I mean, I started crying in the cab, and the guy just says, hey, that's something about that Munson. And I said, oh, yeah, he's a heck of a ball player, you know. He says, well, you didn't hear, he got killed last night. I said, oh, man, you know, and that was, I still didn't believe it. I wanted to punch the cabbie. I thought he was, you know, messing with me or something, and it was just an emptiness, I guess, and, you know, it took you a week or so to really realize that it happened, and, you know, it just never was the same after that.
I was shocked just like everybody else was. We lost a dear friend. I think I was in Montreal in the midst of a doubleheader, and by the end of the second game, I didn't feel any pain anymore. I think I was drunk, to be perfectly honest.
Really?
Yeah. It hit hard.
2 of Munson's closest friends on the Yankees were Lou Piniella and Bobby Mercer, and not surprisingly, they had the hardest time believing their friend was gone.
My wife and I and the kids were at home. It was an off day, and about 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Mr. Steinbrenner called and informed us that Thurman had died in a plane crash in Canton. It was total disbelief. We were shocked. We tried to get a hold of Diane immediately, and we just couldn't do it because their lines were busy naturally. But after thinking about it for a couple hours, I was really mad at Thurman because we had talked about a week or so before he died about the possibility of selling that jet. And I was thinking to myself, why did he have to be flying that airplane?
I just put Thurman on a plane that night, and he told me, he says, go down to the other runway and watch me take off. And I did that. I was with my family at the time, and the one thing I do remember is that when he took off, I just couldn't believe that Thurman was up in this plane all by himself in this most powerful machine taking off by himself. I really couldn't believe that. But I think it was more or less shock, and I didn't feel that way until later on that Thurman was gone.
With flags at half-mast, the Yankees contemplated whether to play the next day, but Diane Munson ended all debate when she said Thurman would have wanted them to. With the catcher's position empty, 51,000 fans stood for a moment of silence, which without cue turned into a 9-minute standing ovation. Getting past the first game without their captain was just the first part of a difficult, emotional weekend for the Yankees. There was still the funeral with a game afterwards.
Monday, we're all going to the funeral. And if we don't get back, we don't get back. We'll forfeit, but we're all going.
The entire team went to Canton, Ohio that day. Munson's friend, Bobby Mercer, gave the eulogy.
Thurman Munson, who wore the pinstripes, was number 15. Number 15 on the field. Number 15 for the records. And number 15 for the halls of Cooperstown. But in living, loving, and legend, Lord, my friend, is number one.
Bobby Mercer's tribute to his friend continued that day. The Yankees flew back for their game at Yankee Stadium against the Orioles. In the 5th inning, Mercer hit a 3-run homer in front of a national television audience. It was truly an emotional moment. Then in the 9th inning, Mercer drove in the 2 winning runs. Having gone without sleep for 30 straight hours, Mercer wasn't scheduled to play that night, but he told manager Billy Martin that to miss this game was something he just couldn't do.
I think it was a game for Thurman. This happened to be the most important game that we played that year. The bat that I used that night, I never did use again, and I gave it to Diane.